another week and another episode of the Backroads Bill podcast. I'm Ben, and pleased to be joined as always by Mr. Backroads Bill. Bill, how are you?
I'm good, and I think today, Ben, we're going to look at how things can heal people, vitamin N for nature in particular.
Today we're doing something a little special. Usually we talk about like a story you've done in the past, an adventure you went on. We'll have a guest on like we've had the past few weeks to talk about some of the topics you've written about and the stuff that interests Backroads Bill. But today we're focusing on you, the man of the hour, because lately, actually since the time we've known each other, and we started this podcast back in, I think it was like April or something like that, when we started working on this. You've been on the IL, the injury list, you might say.
Yeah, unknown to people. Probably, again, the timeliness of this podcast, I would say a year ago to this day, in between my first and second operations, I was kind of fighting for my life. And that's a true fact. I had a super bug and MRSA and from an inoculation that went sideways. And the next thing you knew, within 48 hours is in the hospital, and then I was operated on right away, and things did not go well for a while. And so all of a sudden, Backroads Bill's world came to a grinding halt for a bit. And again, it's just over a year. And actually today, I actually at physiotherapy, I started to actually walk. Not balking like as in B for Bill balking, but walking as in we all of us that are ambulatory can do.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I heard a lot about you, a lot about your adventures and what you were, and then when you came in, you look completely like different. Like you had a walker in you. It was kind of a stark contrast from, I guess, what you were used to being able to do. And that must have been very, very difficult for not just anyone, but for you who's so, you're so active and you're one of the most adventurous people I think out there.
Well, thanks for that. And we all have our challenges, and I'm no different, but the one I've been on for a year, and I often say it's good to have a good sense of humor, because, and we'll talk about being in the dark days and the gray days and how you get out of that kind of thing. But during that time span, Ben, I've probably been in two different kinds of wheelchairs, walkers with wheels and without wheels, crutches, canes, hiking poles, and done them all. I've had 4 operations, and it went like, again, the surgeon saves your life, saves your leg. And then he says, oh, you won't have to wait for the new knee because he took so much flesh out. You get the new knee eventually once they think the bug is gone, and then it's going along kind of well. And all of a sudden one day you wake up, and as I tell people, and particularly my students, take your right hand, make a fist, then reach over and tap your left kneecap, and mine was in 2 pieces. And so then there was another 2 months in a straight leg cast, and actually 2 casts. And then finally, 4 operations, then you start to think about how you're going to get back on your feet. And you use a scooter, you get up, and so many stories. Because when you think about some of the podcasts we've already done with Brian, one with Brian Emblem, when we went to the 4 corners of Ontario, the center of Ontario and the 4 parts of Ontario, that October, just before I got that inoculation, we had got to Fort Severn and up to the furthest point in Northern Ontario, the border of Nunavut, Northern Ontario, I should say, and Manitoba. And so all these adventures kind of came to a halt. But fast forward, we'll talk about another adventure in the near future that I just had. So getting back out to the backroads. But in between is a story in itself.
So how, when you learn that you're going to be you won't be able to like walk properly or kind of do that stuff, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
Well, the first thing, I spent a whole month in the hospital during Christmas, and then the opioids do play havoc on your brain, and there's no question you get depressed, and so you sink into that depression. And my therapist now says, and again, a year later, you've got to do a lot of alone work, and you can't stay trapped in the past. Well, in the beginning, you are trapped, and you think about that. It's the question of why me? Why did this happen to me? And that goes through your head. And when you're not moving and somewhat bedridden, but up and down and trying to manage that pain threshold, as many people will know, and that is your whole world. And then as things kind of progress, if that's the word, but as time goes on, you think about your plight. And in my plight, again, just things go along, and the next thing, the drugs are so strong that your kidneys fail, and then you got to do something else. So you're continually working through that challenge and trying to keep the mind on the right side. But again, there are a lot of dark days. And then what helped me right from the hospital, my daughter and some people at work got me outside. It says right in my notes on my files that I didn't want to leave the room. Now, I was stuck in that room because anyone coming in had to be gowned and masked at the time because of the superbug. But anyway, getting outside, I remember the first times of getting outside was where I needed to be, because I spent my whole life outside pretty much from the time many of us learned to play outside, and of course my whole life in traveling and in education has been outside. So yeah, as we start out by saying, it was devastating. But getting outside, one of the first books I read, and I contacted the author, Benjamin Perry, and the book is entitled Crybaby, Why Your Tears Matter. I'd listened to him on the CBC, and I'm pretty good at contacting people, and I did. He hadn't cried for 10 years, and he wondered why. I had started doing a lot of crying, but had no sense of my tears, and so I had to make it, as anyone going through would understand, in a grieving process, you have to go through that process. And so when you're trying to convalesce and trying to mend, your tears are such. And so eventually over time, I learned that was a good release and a good way to actually measure oneself and to release all that pent up emotion, especially based on that question about why me. So that was one of those pivotal things in the first 6 months.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because, so first of all, when going back a little bit to where you said in your notes, it said you didn't want to go outside. Is that what your headspace was at? Like you actually didn't want to leave the room at all?
Didn't want to leave the hospital room. I have no idea why that was. It was just, that's what had got into my head. I was probably at the deepest part of and again, I was, fighting delirious sort of state and fighting fever in the first part because I was fighting that bug. And then finally you get out of that and get to some stability. So, I didn't want to leave. But getting outside of the hospital and I knew then there was, I think there was, an opportunity, a window. And of course that progressed over time through the winter. And when March came along, I returned to the Canadian Ecology Centre and to the accessibility cabin, and was able to get outside more often using all kinds of devices like the scooter. When I see people on scooters, I always see myself and how important just getting around is, because for some time you lose that ability to drive your own car, and especially when it was in the straight-legged cast. That was a big blow. Your mobility and to get around other than where you are is taken away from you. So again, when I see people that have challenges, I can relate right away. I mean, I've been fortunate to convalesce and get going. So a lot of things are going through my mind right now when I think about that. And it is good. It is good therapy for me, but I think it's good for everyone to talk about and how important it is to get outside, because that I don't know. It was, you don't want to look at your phone. You don't want to look at the screen, watch Netflix. That is, I think, counterproductive. Yeah,
and what I found really interesting when you were talking was when you speak about the grieving process. And I think that everybody, unfortunately, has probably been through that at some point, whether how severe that is or not. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 14, so I kind of went through that. But as you were talking about that, it made me think about like what I, as a young kid, went through. And it was very similar to what obviously it's different because I'm doing it based on someone else, right? And you're doing it based on what's happening to you. But it's really interesting the parallels between that kind of, you're grieving yourself in a way, whereas instead of grieving another person. And I find that a very interesting parallel.
Yeah, it's so well put. It's a common denominator with all of us. If you think about birth and death, and then when people leave our lives, family and friends and loved ones, we go through that process. But then when you have to do it with yourself because of the challenge you're facing, it's it is kind of an interesting thing, and I'm sure there's all kinds of works done on that. The other thing that happened, and I often talk about this in my whole life, is vitamin N for nature. And of course, Richard Louv, the author of Vitamin N and Last Child in the Woods, I contacted him, and he goes by Rich, and Rich told me some interesting things that again propelled me to continue to want to be outside. And it's not that I didn't want to be outside, but just being outside and that energy. And I think I think when I was put two things during COVID, I thought I really knew nature. And in that particular time, I wrote 411 poems consecutively, one each day with a photo, with some explanation. It will be a book. And that was good discipline. And I thought I knew nature. But when people weren't around at the Canadian Ecology Centre in Saint Mihiel Champlain for Metro Park, I really got closer to nature. And so then fast forward to convalescing and getting back on my feet, but just re-energizing myself. It was another way that I thought there is energy out there. That's the best. It's the best place to be. It's the only place I want to be. And I in fact, to this day, I think I try to purposely get outside more and more each day. So Richard Louv helped me with that as well, that vitamin N. Maybe it was just more of a proof that that's where we should be, especially when we talk about mind, body, and spirit and mental health for everyone.
And when you finally got out of the hospital and you're back, kind of obviously not at 100%, but you're back doing stuff, do you experience those things that you maybe took for granted before? Like, do you experience them differently now?
I do.
Yeah,
I absolutely. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain that energy field that's out there. That that this is good for you, and maybe it's just, again, through therapy, it opens up the mind, and you want to embrace that. But it's the place, and of course, we now know that there are doctors that prescribe vitamin N. It's that whole field of research is going to be more important, and I hope in the long run it helps people appreciate the great outdoors, nature, and that helps us address the things we have to do with mitigating climate change.
And there's probably also a part of that where you take something and you have it taken away from you, and you go to like you're saying, I might never be able to do X, Y, and Z again.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really scary. But I think if there's one positive that could come out of this, it's that, when you get, because you're still a relatively younger person, right? You still have a lot of your bodily functions and everything. And like, you're still able to do stuff that maybe in your 70s and 80s, your body just won't let you do. But you've already gone through that experience where you're able to find solutions to those problems. So when you are at that age and you are at that point, I feel like it might be easier for you to accept that and be able to go around those challenges that you might get.
You might be substituting for my therapist right now. But I was thinking as you were leading into the question and thoughts, absolutely positively. I mean, I've hiked the Himalayas in Annapurna. I've walked off the glacier in Greenland and walked a navigation distance, no trail, off that glacier to a distance from, say, North Bay to Aurelia. Mm-hmm. And those things, will I do them again? Well, I've done them. I always look forward to the next walkabout or hike. And it was during my whole year, a couple things happened around about March. I knew further to your, what am I going to be able to do and not do? Because I'm older, not old. And yeah, I'll continue to do this. So two things happened. Interestingly enough, I thought, because I am a rower, I rowed in university and did my national team tests. And so I ordered a rowboat from Giesler in Powassan, a cedar strip boat with a slide, and I got a slide put in it. It's more of a dory kind of shaped thing. I ordered that because I knew eventually, this is even before I guess after my fourth operation with the straight guy, I had ordered it before then, and that just set me back. But I ordered that boat because I knew being on the water would be easier than walking, so upper body. And the second thing I did was ordered a carbon fiber. I have a carbon fiber canoe from Swift's in South River, but I talked to Bill Swift and ordered another one that was modified. I actually went down there when I had my straight leg cast on and got into the boat, tried some boats, not in the water, but just sitting what would be best for me, because I knew getting in and out of the canoe, I thought then I will never, right in the beginning, and maybe to this day, and maybe I will never get back in a kayak, but I will get back in the canoe, because it's the difference between sitting down and then just kind of stepping into the canoe and sitting on your seat. Anyway, that was done too. And then eventually, come August, after the straight leg cast, I started paddling and rowing with both those boats. And being outside with those boats in nature was like a magic elixir. It was probably the best drug I could ever take. Having got off the opioids and really kind of defeating that, because I can understand people's addictions a little bit. Mine was probably mild, but it was still there. You take them every day, twice a day, 4 times a day, and over the months, it's a crutch that you all of a sudden, I've got to stop doing this because it's messing with my mind, so to speak. So going from those dark days, the very dark days, trying to get to the gray days, and even to this day, trying to shoo away those clouds that come in, because again, you do have some of this post-stress. We can't say it's severe like people that have severe events like soldiers and the like, but I know after a year, and particularly this week, is very difficult on me, because I think back to that day, and then all of a sudden your world is upside down.
Mm-hmm. And it happens just like that, right? It's
a blink of an eye. We know that, whether it's a car accident or something happens and you get a phone call or something, but your whole life changes in an instant. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to still go forward, because 2 of my followers in social media, they're compelling comments. One says, and I know I've used up my 9 lives in my life. So they said, Bill, you don't have 9 lives, you have 19 lives.
Yeah.
And then the other most important one that came across was, Bill, it's just not your time. Mm-hmm. When you think about how close you were, that can be fatal. And I remember the surgeon, Dr. Aaron Van Fleet, who I went to the dance with 4 times, and he said, this is about your life.
Yeah. And what I find very interesting about the blink of an eye thing is, if I go back to my dad passing away, I remember, so he had bowel cancer. So it was like about a year. I don't even remember. I think it was something like a year or like 2 years or whatever. And it's especially, it's weird because it's I don't know if it's tougher than if it just happens immediately, but he was never sick. And I just remember one day where he was sick. And he was in bed, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you in bed? This is weird. And then it just kind of escalates there. And a lot of it's foggy because I was so young. But it is everything changes all of a sudden. You're in Sudbury all the time getting treatment. And by the end, he was a very fit guy, and he was in his late 50s. By the end of it, he looked like he was in his 80s because of the chemotherapy and what you go through. And it's tough to see people like that. Was there anything, and I don't know if this is going a little bit too deep, but your family and the people around you, was there anything where they see you and they go, this is really kind of difficult to
of course
look at?
Yeah, because they're shocked. You look like the expression "death warmed over." I remember too. I don't even know if I looked in the mirror Again, you're delirious for such a length of time, but yeah, you're in that state of looking and feeling sick, and of course, conversations probably weren't good ones, and so yeah, it's hard on everyone. It's hard on your support system, and of course, in my case, eventually, as things start to progress, people, it's a difference than dying the slow death versus progressing and seeing where all this is going to lead, even to this day after a year later. So yeah, no, I think that's that whole part. And again, we're talking about this today, and everyone listening in will have some sort of parallels, as you said early, to this. But getting back to that, again, maybe the theme of this podcast is to just be outside and how beneficial that is. And we know that, but again, I think we really take it for granted that we should go outside every day. We should go for a walk. We should go to our favorite spots. And of course, something we teach for anxiousness in schools and things are what are called me or sit spots, those favorite spots. And I'm doing one right now. I did that 411 during COVID, but right now that story, and we'll do this story in a fulsome way with Claremont Duval, but it was where this spot near the Canadian Ecology Center, it was near actually a place I couldn't get to anymore, and it just so happened it was nearby. But I saw it from a photographer's point of view. It had depth. It had that kind of look to the horizon. It had trees and had water. Anyway, I started taking pictures of it every day, and then partway along, someone said, "Oh, Claremont Duval, the Mattawa well-known French-Canadian artist, had painted this." And then further to that, someone who was dying of cancer commissioned. Claremont had painted it years before, but then 2017, someone commissioned him to paint the same scene where I go to every day. And unfortunately, he was to pick up the painting, but died on the weekend. He was supposed to pick it up on Monday. But I've been going to this spot. Now, I think today is going to be number 44, and we'll see how far that goes. I'm just enamored with this whole opportunity to go to a me or a sit spot and contemplate a few things, but look at that. And what has shocked me in essence is looking at the different moods. I don't go there at the same time every day, but I do go there every day, about that, how the whole thing changes. And then I've kind of metaphorically, most recently, I've been having a relationship with a person called nature. And so it's almost a love affair. And so I'm trying to work that out, how important, earlier in our conversation, how important of a common denominator this is to be outside. So I've been doing that and having some fun with that.
Yeah, I remember when you started this, I think it was maybe day 10 or something like that. And you said, I don't know if I'm going to try for a month and see what happens. And you're like, I don't know if it's going to go that long. And now we're almost a month and a half in, and there's no sign of stopping yet.
No, there's no sign of stopping. And it'll be, well, one time, again, we're going to talk about these prospectors and the caves they lived in. So one day I went out, got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, typical Backroads Bill, drove up Highway 11.
Wait, what? 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah. Well, actually, that week, the Highway 11 had been closed here at North Bay once and then closed up north, so I couldn't get there. So on the weekend, I get up and I go, first stop, after meeting Brian Emlyn, we go to find the cave near Larder Lake, which is east of Kirkland Lake. We do all that, really exciting. And then we go to find another cave where a prospector lived in it in Matachewan, which is west of Kirkland Lake and Highway 66. Anyway, do all that. Fast forward. Then I got to get back. I couldn't take the picture at 4 o'clock in the morning when I left, so I had to get back and I had to take a night shot of the location just to keep my streak going. It's a funny thing. It turned out all right. So it is a bona fide streak. And how I'm I'm not looking forward to the day when, say, for instance, if I go traveling this year, what's going to happen? Say I'm out.
And you can't take multiple photos. And
No,
pretend.
you cannot.
No.
You can. And I tell people what they can. Somebody actually yesterday in one of my photos, not the one at the spot, but one of my Mattawa River photos where I turned it upside down, and it was a reflection shot. So they said, "Oh, I've seen pictures of artificial intelligence." Doing this AI, and of course they knew that I'd been on the river. You could see my canoe and everything, and so. But the camera properties don't lie, so the dates it's date stamped in there. So yes, you cannot take multiple pictures. You have to keep it going. So it'll be a day if I do go away anywhere. What am I going to do? And I know I have a conference coming up, I think in January. So I don't know. That's because again, when people ask me about the 411. And when during COVID, so that was tricky business too. So you just have to keep going, and then people say, "Why did you stop?" It became like work, and I don't know why that was. Getting to 360. Once I got over 200, that was
You're not doing it for yourself anymore. You're doing it for the
yeah. So and all this, the listeners, everything I do is my avocation. I don't get paid for any of the things I do. It's truly my avocation, not my vocation. I have a job.
Yep, you're here because you want to be here.
I do. That's why it's exciting. And the podcast is exciting as we go down this road together. There'll be more and more exciting people we bring into the studio and topics to talk about that are topical. Today is kind of topical because it's kind of all about nature and where all these things occur.
Yeah. And I think too when you talk about nature, I think it's not as much. Well, at least for me, it's not as much nature as it is like sun, and the vitamin D and everything that you get from it because. I mean, a lot of people know seasonal depression. They know winter. The one thing that sucks about winter is how it, the sun comes up late, it sets early, and that was really tough because, like even here, I've got a window in my office, so that's kind of nice. But when I worked in retail, like you would get to work and it would barely be sun out. You would leave, and it would be dark out. And even now, like when I get home, it's like 5 o'clock. I feel like it's bedtime.
Yeah.
You get home and you're like, oh, it's time to go to sleep, and you look and it's 6 o'clock at night. So I think that's tough for a lot of people who don't have the opportunity to be able to get outside during the day.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for those kind of people?
A couple things sprang to mind there. I was in Iceland one Christmas.
My brother was just in Iceland.
Yeah, at Christmas. So the window of opportunity was only about 6 hours. And the other day, a student of mine teaching above the 60th parallel, but she sent back Melanie sent back a photo. I think it was 1:24 in the afternoon. Anyway, they're going into a period of darkness. So, the horizon, the sun will be there and maybe just a glimpse, but it's dark all for a period of time. It's just dark.
Isn't that for like a month or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know but it was intriguing. My advice is try to get outside every day.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Whether it's a walk around the block, down to the waterfront, wherever you may be, your favorite trail. I know here in North Bay, I mean, if you go over to the Laurier Woods, that no one ever has to have a snowblower or shovel there. It's just trampled down by the hundreds of people that go there probably every day. I don't think there's a counter there, but and there are places like that all over Northern Ontario, everywhere. We are blessed with green space, so why not use it? And so I often harken back to Central Park in New York City. I mean, how forward thinking was that? What to do that with, and there are all kinds of examples in the world like that. But the advice is to get out and if you can and it's so much better for us because you mentioned about seasonal affective disorder, SAD, and that can affect some people. I know when even the barometer changes, it affects me. So it's important to be out and do whatever you like to do, whether you're with yourself or with someone else. And of course, I think when people walk along with someone else, great conversations occur as well. You're talking about things that perhaps matter.
And there's so much stuff in North Bay as well. And I think it's kind of interesting because a lot of people who grow up here, like a lot of people I know, when you're in that kind of college age, right around the end of high school, between like 18 and 25, a lot of people want to leave. They want to go to like Toronto or a big city, or they want to go somewhere exciting. But then a lot of the people who come from the GTA area, and I do the Frontline, which is a battalion podcast, and we get a lot of people that come from the GTA area, and you get a lot of people who talk about like North Bay because there's so much stuff up here as well, which is absolutely crazy.
Well, you look at Canada College and Nipissing University, and
the trails are right there.
They're right there. And my students in the Schultz School of Education, that's one of their reasons why they've chosen North Bay. And they can choose all kinds of communities where there is that green space, or that I think it's that economy of scale where you're not in a city of 2 million, you're in a city of 54,000. You can move around and you're everywhere within 7 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's always neat to think about that. And
the waterfront.
You've got, we're in the height of land. We've got like 2 major lakes, one on each side, and we've got creeks in between, and again, the trails and the escarpment. And then of course, we often describe North Bay as a canoe jumping off point because the mecca of paddling to the north, you've got Temagami. To the west, you've got Lake Nipissing, Killarney. To the east, you've got the Mattawa and Ottawa rivers. And to the south, you've got Algonquin Park in general. And so within, half an hour, you can be in wonderful canoeing, kayaking waters.
The one thing I forgot to mention too is I know Dave Dale, who's our content director at Echo. He actually published your photo in our Echo Essentials, our newsletter, which you can find on NorthBayEcho.ca every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right to your inbox. And that was kind of a cool thing. Like he picked that up and he was kind of publishing for the people that were part of it. So your stuff's getting out there.
My stuff's getting. Well, I think that's an indication of what we're talking about today. That Backroads Bill is back, but getting back and doing the things that I love to do. With some modifications is a good thing. And so for the mind, body, and spirit, you have to think that you can do it within reason. And again, there may be limitations, but if you love what you're doing, you're going to do it in a way that you're going to be satisfied at the end of the day. And so, the original question was about getting outside. Again, I think when people come in from a walk or whatever, they have that feeling of exhilaration that's a really, really important part. Could be the most important part of their day.
Mm-hmm. What's future plans for future adventures?
Well, yes.
Let's go. Let's do 2 different ones. The realistic one, right, for what you're able to do now, and the unrealistic, or maybe not the unrealistic, but the one that if you have full functionality, you can do whatever you want, the one that you really want to go. Yeah,
good questions. The one place there's many places to go in the world, and I've been to many places, but I still haven't made it to New Zealand.
Really?
And I think I also flirting with the idea, the tip of South America, somewhere down there in perhaps Chile or Argentina.
In the mountains?
Yeah, the mountains are perhaps I'd really like to retrace some of the stops of Shackleton in the Antarctica. That's so.
Antarctica would be the ultimate Backroads Bill adventure.
Yeah, it would be to do that. Especially, I'd love to trek across the island. You had to trek across the island to the whaling station to get a boat to go back to rescue the men. It's quite of course, a leadership story. So that might be unrealistic, but realistically, the next Backroads adventure in Northern Ontario, whatever that might be. One thing come next spring of 2024 will be when Denny True from Colorado Springs comes back up, and we talked about this on the podcast about the fighter jet crash and the bomber in the Cold War near Hearst, and that he wants to come back, and that's a story where I was kind of the spiritual conduit to link father and son. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But I want to, if he comes up, we want to go back there. That's one. And of course, there's the want to get back out to the Slate Islands on Lake Superior. That's very doable by canoe, kayak, or boat. So lots of things to do. And again, most recently with these prospectors caves, that day was exhilarating for me to find the caves, and then the story will be written. But again, that's kind of Northern Ontario heritage and folklore and things out there that are kind of mysterious.
I think you have an upcoming story, don't you? That you just finished?
Yeah, I'm just finishing it. It should be, and that'll be, and we'll talk about that on the podcast for sure.
Can you give us a teaser?
Well, the teaser is that these two prospectors lived in caves, and they actually built annexes, the cabin next to the hole in the rock. And believe it or not, it's uncanny, Ben. When you go there, the caves look the same. You're going to say like all caves look the same. Well,
all caves do look the same. Let's be honest.
They don't, because they were the formation of some glacial erratics that came together and are vented out in the back for their hearth. And the interesting thing, the floors of what would have been their cooking area or the hearth were littered with flakes of quartz, and quartz is an indicator of gold. And so they probably brought their cores samples back at the end of the day and pulverized these cores and picked up, and probably with magnifying glasses, and see if there were traces of flecks of gold in the quartz, whatever. But it was, both floors were littered with quartz.
You know what's interesting? So my uncle, who's on my dad's side, who's from Bancroft, for those who don't know, it's kind of close to Algonquin Park over by the Ottawa area. And this was when I was very young, and it's funny because it used to be a very small town, like literally one intersection. It had like a Dairy Queen, and that was it. That was basically it. And now you go there's like 2 Tim Hortons, there's like a car dealership. It is popping off, as the kids would say. But anyways, so I was very young, and there were my uncle always told these tall tales. Always. It was funny. So he would be like, I was raised by wolves, and but you were young enough that you'd kind of believe it, right? So he, the one time, and I'll never forget this, he takes us to these caves, and he made us believe that there was a time portal in these caves where there were like dinosaurs and stuff. It was wild, but he took us into these caves that had like stuff like quartz and these kind of different things in it. And I'll never forget that, because I think I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time, but we all believed it. It was a wild time. But as soon as you said caves, that's the first thing that popped into my head.
Well, he was a storyteller, to be sure, and used the physical environment in this case to make a real experiential story. What better storyteller can you actually be in the spot and think, here's the portal of going somewhere the dinosaurs, like, I get it right away. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Bill, what do you want to leave us with?
Well, some people might be wondering, but I have my bling on my head. It is, this will...
I thought you were just stylish, to be honest.
Well, stylish, the seasonal, it is the season for many religions and for celebrations. And so you have some bling on, and you can go to any kind of Dollarama type store and find it in the Christmas cheer. And that's basically what I'm doing. I feel good about today, having talked about the journey I've been through, and I'm not there yet, but I'll get there.
Thank you to Bill for joining me again to share his wisdom and really what was a truly powerful story. And it has been an absolute pleasure to see Bill week after week coming into the studio looking better and better, finally not needing assistance, walking on his own the last few weeks. It's been an amazing sight to see, and there's no one who deserves to be able to get to recover basically back to 100% than Bill, who when it comes to the world of nature and outdoors and all the history and all the stories that he shared, not just here on the podcast, but also through Village Media and through the CBC and all these different platforms, and even every day on social media. So really glad to see Bill doing much, much better. If you want to catch more Backroads Bill, you can on all of your favorite podcast platforms, and of course over on NorthBayEcho.ca, where there are also a lot of other fun things, like our newsletter, Echo Essentials, which I mentioned earlier on the show, that featured some of Bill's photos that you can see, where he took a photo every single day from the same spot. Really, I was following that on Facebook. It was a really, really cool project that he's doing and continues to do. Of course, the Echo Essentials, it comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I think it does a great job of capturing what is happening in the community of North Bay. while you're at NorthBayEcho.ca, you can also find other local podcasts like our flagship To North Bay with Love, where yesterday we had a world champion water skier on, Jamie Bull, who is from North Bay, grew up water skiing on Trout Lake, and now is racking up the silverware. So that's a really exciting and interesting conversation she had with Lisa yesterday on To North Bay with Love. And of course, as always, don't forget to join us next Wednesday for yet another Backroads Bill adventure.